Every business is different. Everybody's needs are going to be different. Understand what's going on with everybody else. Bring up and promote up people you can delegate to.
Implementing systems, giving people direction and permission to be able to make decisions without having to call mom and dad. Get yourself out of the way and let people make happen. And more importantly, don't forget past clients because that's your gold.
Let the business breathe, and let it breathe within the guardrails of allowing the owner to let the team move without him or her. If you keep holding it back and suffocating it, you're not going to go anywhere. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Business Lunatics, the weekly show where four fearless loonies pull back the curtain on the wild, the wonderful, and sometimes downright ridiculous world of entrepreneurship. There's no question you have to be mad to be in business and being an entrepreneur. We talk about things that no fluff, no BS. It's just pure business madness. And today we're going to kind of follow through from last week's show. And we want to talk about a little bit more about why do CEOs, founders, right, business owners, why do they struggle to grow the company? What are the issues that push them down this road that where they can't seem to get out of their self? In other words, they're at $1 million, and why can't they get to two? Why can't they get to 1.5 million? What are the issues wrapped up around growing your company? And obviously sales is a part of this process, but there's other factors as well. And on that note, Steve, you want to start us off?
I'm going to start with the bottleneck is always at the top of the bottle. And one of the biggest problems, and I'll be the first one to tell you, being an entrepreneur for 40 years, I have been the bottleneck many times. And I typically become the bottleneck when I don't feel like what should be happening is actually happening. So I start feeling like I have to micromanage. But I think it comes from a entrepreneur, a young entrepreneur, or maybe someone that hasn't made it that big yet, to where they have an executive team they can start delegating to, or no one's taught them how to delegate, and then let them go. If they do 80% as good as you, that's 80% is it of your time back that you can do 100% of what you do really best and what you do when you're working genius. So let them fall down 20%. That's fine. But I personally think the number one issue to fix is that, and it's like catch-22. You can't hire more people until you can make more sales. So do I fix sales first, or do I hire some people and delegate? Where do you start? It really depends, chicken or the egg, depending on your company and the situation you're in. But the sooner you can start to delegate things off of your plate, because most entrepreneurs start a business because they're good at making or doing or producing or creating or whatever, and they're the show, the sooner you can make yourself redundant, the sooner you'll be able to start growing and scaling.
I mean, it's almost like it's the same person, right? He, she doesn't make a difference. With that same intelligence that built the business is the same intelligence that is now slowing it down, right?
Yeah.
And it's not incompetence at the end of the day. It's a part. I mean, listen, it's an emotional part, right? There's the control factor. I don't want any decisions made unless I approve it, right? Well, that's a good bottleneck right there. And then the other part of it is trust. Yeah, Steve, you mentioned delegation. Well, delegation works, but if delegation is means that your team is coming back to the CEO saying, "Can I do this?" That's not much of a delegation.
That's not delegation.
That's not delegation. Exactly. When we say delegate, we're saying release it, right? Yeah. Allow the team to move forward. And listen, I've heard it all over my years. But you run into the situation where, well, what if they make a mistake? I'm like, well, by golly, they should. right? It's like, that same intelligence that's now slowing everything down. It's like you want your team to make some mistakes, allow them to learn so that down the road things are easier for you. You don't want to turn around and have everything come back to you. Essentially, the what's the best way to put this? Uh, let's maybe some interesting ideas. So, intelligence is the idea of saying yes. We're going to do things with precision. Now, the only problem is if that intelligence is causing problems in growth, the reason you're stumbling is because growth wants momentum. It's
Mm.
like you can't just, now that you've pushed this built, this what you created all the way up the mountain, it's like if you want that all that energy to actually do something and grow the company, you have to allow it to breathe. What do you think? What do you think, Freddie?
Well, I think it's a combination of things because one, you need to have systems in place so that you can basically start delegating some stuff and so people know what they need to be doing. But a lot of times, as I just mentioned before we started recording, I just got a new customer today. They've been using, very old school ways of doing their business. They've been successful for years, but they realize that they're plateaued and they don't have any of the tools. They're not utilizing a CRM. Okay. So that's going to limit their growth because they're manually tracking stuff like that. One of the issues that they were talking about was getting scheduling. They call somebody, then they call them back, and then they call them back. And I says, well, why wouldn't you just have what about setting up an online calendar that syncs with your Apple calendar, that syncs with your wife, who's also part of the business, and you can see availabilities and everything else? He goes, oh, that would be great. This is, well, we can tie it all into one system. So a lot of times what I have found is people don't know what they don't know until they know what they didn't know. And
Yeah, that's
and the
very much my
Way to
reality
wake
is,
up.
yeah, but the reality is just like you're saying, Maylee, they get to a certain level, they've gotten a business growth, but they can't go into momentum mode because they don't know what they don't know
they
because
hit
they've reached a level and all of a sudden they find out because like this guy, I've been talking to him for several months, he started to realize what he didn't know was holding him back from going to a whole nother level.
they hit a
Uh,
ceiling of complexity, is what Dan Sullivan, the strategic coach, calls it. You hit a
yeah.
certain spot, you've taken as far as you can. And again, like Maley said, it's not that you're not smart or you don't know what, you're the entrepreneur, but the reality is you get certain inertia, certain momentum. At some point, you need more hands to hold it up because you're going to get tired. And eventually you're going to start making mistakes. So let them fall down, let them make a mistake. But if you
I agree.
trust in the process and you hire the right people, so hire some A players. I call those people, wind them up, let them go. Teach them,
Yep.
Well,
train them,
yeah,
give them your core values, teach them how everything works. Here's your
And a lot of
SOP.
times,
Wind
yeah,
them up
I
and
and,
let them go and let them fall down.
because
They get back up
because
again
yeah, because an A player is going to step in and probably see things that you don't see right off
and
the
make it
bat,
better and make it
and they
better.
make it
100%.
better, systematize it, speed
Yeah.
it up, improve it,
Yeah.
rip out systems, put a better system in, and you're going to just go, I never even thought of any of
Why
that
why
stuff.
didn't I think of it?
Yeah,
You know what I say?
yeah.
Cool. Good job.
I agree. I
But
mean, what
but
you're talking about though is creating an environment, right? You're creating an environment, you're creating a culture within your organization. And
Culture.
that's Steve, it kind of ties in what you were saying. You're transitioning from the mode of, pushing up your pushing
Owner
this company,
operator.
right, owner operator all the way up the hill. Well, now you got to kind of let it go, right? But in letting it go, you're creating that environment. You're allowing people to make mistakes. You're allowing people to come up with their own ideas, which is what Freddie is talking about, where those ideas all of a sudden are things that you may not have thought about, but they make things more efficient. They make things move faster. They make things more effective in a lot of cases. That's what, that's the environment you want to create to be able to move from and build the app business and make it grow. Now, the one thing that we haven't talked about is how this impacts sales, but the
That's where
reality
I
is
was
that
just going to go. I
yeah,
was
go ahead.
just
Go
going
ahead,
to
Freddie.
go talk about that because what you're doing is when someone finds out what they don't know and they learn that, then all of a sudden they start selling themselves because they're going, oh, okay, this would make my life easier. And so you don't have to sell because you're now talking business strategy. And like I say, with my meeting this morning, we talked about all these other things. And I said, okay, well, what about this? So what are you doing for a newsletter? What are you doing for these kind of things? And all of a sudden they were lighting up because I was showing them the system and they're going, wow, I can do this, I can do that. And all of a sudden, they were starting to see the possibilities themselves. And that's the best sale because they're now buying. You're not selling anymore. It's you've transitioned from selling to them now buying, and now they're asking more questions. They're seeing the possibilities. They're lighting up and getting excited themselves because all of a sudden the vision starts. Their vision that was this big starts to go this big, and then they start realizing I've been leaving a ton of cash on the table because this guy doesn't even have a Google business page. So he's got 0 reviews and he's been in business for years. So we talk about, hitting the ceiling. That person didn't know what he didn't know. And now he knows what he didn't know. And now he's starting to see possibilities. And that's a sale for me, but it's also going to generate sales for him to be able to grow his business because he's getting himself out of his own way.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely. And
this is like what's the best way to put it? Growth is being limited by ignorance, or is it being limited by ignorance, or is it because it's a refusal to acknowledge what's in front of you?
The word's
And
complacency.
yeah, exactly. I mean,
It's working. It's
and
working for my business. It's a lifestyle
I'm like,
business. It's
yeah,
just working.
I'm not convinced that this is ignorance because it takes intelligence to get a business off the ground. So what I'm leaning more towards a refusal to acknowledge what's in front what's in front of you. And I think a lot of business owners need to be able to scale and let the business evolve beyond themselves. I mean, that's
yes,
that's kind of the
well,
direction we're going.
I need
Go
to
ahead, Steve.
jump right on that one because that is
Go
the
ahead.
perfect segue into what I was thinking. In the beginning of this, we talked about, or I talked about, the chicken or the egg, whether you need a sales team to sell for you to make sales, so you can hire more people, so you can delegate on down the line. But there's something called the no office office. And it's an old technique that Dan Sullivan, again, from the strategic coach, taught me many years ago. And you basically don't have an office as the owner of the company because if you're the one doing all the sales and you haven't hired a sales team yet, hire an admin, maybe hire a manager, depending on the kind of company, or a chief operating officer, or whatever. Get a couple people that can kind of run things, at least keep them from falling down, and they can reach out to you if they need to. So not everybody's running to you
Yeah.
because I used to have a sign on my door. If you don't come to me with an answer, I'm sorry, with a question and 3 possible answers, don't come to me because I want you to think it out a little bit. But the no office is you basically spend your time doing what you did best in the beginning to build the business, which was going out, meeting people, talking about what it is you do, and getting new customers. And as you build that and you get more customers, you start getting in more cash. You can then hire more people you can then delegate to, as well as hire salespeople you can delegate the sales role to. And eventually you can work yourself right out of having to be there. So now you got an organization that's basically producing cash and you're not doing any of the work.
I
That's
mean,
for the
yeah,
bottom.
and this might be a good segue to start talking about how this impacts sales. It's one thing to impact the overall company; it's another thing to impact how the environment of the company. It's another thing to impact the operations of the company. But I think what the direction you're heading over here, Steve, is when does the CEO become the bottleneck that slows down sales, right? The CEO says, I need to
When
improve price.
guardrails aren't in place, when
Right.
the owner doesn't realize I need to give them the rules of the road, and
Yeah.
just all I should ever have to do is make sure they're living by them, or talk to my manager who's managing them to make sure they're living by them.
Right. I mean,
Or,
so, but yeah, but what I was going to get to is that the same concept of what we just talked about applies to sales. In other words, the CEO shouldn't be involved necessarily with
No,
everything related to pricing. If the
no, but
sales
in the
guys decide that
beginning,
he
when you're
wants to,
young, when you're first
yeah,
small, you are. But no,
well,
I
yeah, but
totally.
my point is that the sales guy breathe as well. Let him decide what the price is. It impacts his commission anyway. Let him decide, what the discounts
But
or
you
the
got to give
packages
them
might look like.
guardrails. You can just if
Sure.
you do discount, okay, you need to make at least this much margin. I know how much my cost is.
Right.
I know how much
Exactly.
margin
Right.
I need to make.
Yeah.
Here's your bottom line margin, or you know what? These are my prices. You don't lower prices. This is what we sell it for. But those rules, as long as that salesperson knows what the rules of
Sure.
the game are, they can win. And that's when you can step back and just let them go do their thing.
well, yeah,
Freddie, go ahead.
I'm gonna
Mhm.
add on onto that because I had this happen to me once. I had I was a district manager and I had to report to the VP of sales. And he had rules that you had to contact him for any type of a discount. And so here I'm talking to a deal, trying to put together the deal. And we're talking, and the guy wanted a particular discount, and I had no discount decision making abilities. So I had to go and excuse myself and say, I got to call my boss, which is the worst thing you can possibly do in a
Worst thing you
sales
can
situation.
Embarrassing as hell.
Oh yeah, and then when I
exactly.
and basically the guy basically said, and I remember it burned into my brain, "Why am I talking to you?"
Yeah.
And it just was a
And
kick
he's
in the
right.
face because he's dealing with the wrong person. So you're
Mhm.
absolutely right, and I want to emphasize that you need to have, people, sales individuals do not need to call mom and dad to be able to make a decision to close a deal. They need to understand the rules and conditions that they've got, what the league way is. And there's also another rule that I've learned being in sales for decades is you don't ask permission, you ask for forgiveness. So you close the damn deal.
that's that's out there all the time. I agree.
Right, but
Amen.
most people,
Amen.
but most people don't realize that. But you close the
Mhm.
deal and you deal with it afterwards. But you got the business off the street, and I can guarantee you'll get some talking to. But at the end of the day, they're going to end up saying, "But aside from that, great job closing the sale." That's it.
Yep. I mean, yeah, but again, going to Steve's point, you need those guardrails, right? But aside from the needing those guardrails, which is, yeah, as long, and then if the sales team knows what those guardrails is, number one, they won't need to call you, right?
Right.
Dealing with that embarrassing
Make
situation,
yourself redundant.
right? And more importantly, the CEO, the owner, the founder needs to let go of the steering wheel, right? Assuming that the guardrails in place and just it's kind of like especially nowadays, I can say this, right? It's like a self-driving car. Let it ride.
Yeah.
Jesus, take the wheel.
Well, but the other thing that I think limits sales, and we talked about hitting the ceiling and also not growing sales, is people get complacent and they don't go back for advanced sales techniques, advanced trainings, new ways of doing things, new technologies that are applicable, and etc. Because the guy that may have started the business, you know, was in the industry, said, "Okay, I'm going to start a business. My buddy over here is going to give me some work. My other buddy over here is going to give me some work, and so now I've got myself a business." And I'm going to go out and get it. Oh, that guy knows that guy, and so I got that deal. But really, they don't really have any sales skills, and so they get to the point where they get a certain level, and all of a sudden now you're dealing with a larger company that has a process and everything else, and you're out of your league, you're out of your game, And because you didn't level up your game and learn additional sales techniques, new methodologies. I mean, I've got a whole thing of sales books and I've taken a multitude of sales classes because there's always a new approach and you forget stuff and things go out and you
Yeah.
need to refresh and go, oh, yeah, I forgot about that
There's
approach.
there's the big elephant in the room. It costs a lot more to get a client than it does to keep a client. And people that do sales forget, a simple, "Hey Bailey, how are you? I just wanted to call." And I did just gonna do this driving in my
Something.
car. I
Well,
go one appointment to the
that's my
other.
whole world.
And I'd
Yeah.
just be like, "Hey, I haven't spoken to Maylene in a while. Hey, Maylene, how's it going? How's things? How's my technicians treating you? Is everybody happy? Oh, yeah, I wanted to call you because we were thinking about upgrading our server. Oh, you new server? Sure, no problem. I'll send
Yeah,
it over.
exactly.
But I got more business out of just following up with people and checking in and seeing how they're doing because you never know how somebody's doing until you ask them.
Well,
And you
and
might
that goes
find
back to
out
what
your stinking engineer sucks. I don't know why you send him here. Well, nice to know. But if you didn't call the guy, maybe he's not an outwardly vocal kind of person that's going to tell you. He's just going to go to another vendor. And that would
yeah,
cost you.
but that goes, I mean, this goes back to what Freddie was saying, right? That it stay just human to human interaction, talking to each other,
You
talk
need
to
to
the
stay
client.
right. You need to stay in contact, and that's how you create what I call them super fans. Here's another
Yeah.
perfect example. Okay, I met somebody at a networking function a couple weeks ago. We scheduled for a meeting yesterday. They are a video production company. Okay, they do great work, but it's a husband and wife team. They're kind of plateaued. And so we were talking, having our, follow up of a networking function, because, that's one thing I really emphasize people to do. And we were talking, I'm looking at their website and they've got some things I pointed out to them. And I asked them, they're looking for sales. I says, well, when's the last time you reached out to your past customers? Oh, we reach out to our customers this past Christmas. I says, well, how long have you guys been in business? And they said, X amount of years. And I says, well, what about the past customers? And they go, well, what do you mean? It says, well, the customers that were 2 years ago, 3 years ago. What about those? Did you reach out to them?
Yeah,
They
exactly.
were like a deer in headlights.
No.
They go, what do you mean? I says, well, that's your gold right there. And all of a sudden, the light bulb went off and it says, you should reach out to them. I says, the best time to engage people is Thanksgiving. You flip it around, it's giving thanks. And that's the best time to, I said, I told her, it says, that's the best time to express gratitude, appreciation. And by the way, because of you, our business has grown. This is people invested into your business. They want to know you're successful. They want to know that you're growing because that's why they bought from you. So it's okay to share that we've grown our business. It's okay
Yeah.
to share that we've added, Michael and Michelle and
Whatever.
all these
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
I mean,
And a lot.
that kind of goes into, sending out a press release and letting the world know that you exist. But what you're saying, Freddie, is about being remembered, right? It's being remembered for the right reason. That's really what you're doing, right? I mean, you're telling your story. You're telling them what's going on within your world, but you want them to it's not just about developing the relationship. It's the fact that you're going to be memorable, right? You need to say, stay in touch, communicate this, tell them what's going on with the idea that when time comes, that customer, that prospect is going to say, oh, I know who to call. That's what
Yeah,
we're
I'm
really
gonna.
talking about.
Even with
Yeah, and
maybe a
then hang on.
past client, maybe
Right. I
even
want to.
nothing wrong
I
with
want to add
reaching out to a
something that
past
Steve
client.
said. I want to emphasize on something Steve said. I had a guy, a mortgage guy. I told him to send Halloween cards to all his past customers. Okay. He thought I was nuts. He goes, what the heck would I want to do that? I says, and make a picture of you in a costume, make it funny, put it on the front of the card and send it. No agenda, just reaching out, wishing everybody happy fun. It's a fun time. Okay. As kids, we dressed up. He sent it. He reached out to me and says, you can't believe what happened. People called me, past customers that I hadn't talked to in several years, thanked me for the card, thought it was really funny and hilarious. And he goes, I got several refis out of it. That's sales.
Right, that's
Yeah,
sales.
absolutely.
Well, then the business development side of it is developing the relationships, communicating, making sure that you get remembered. I mean, these are the things that facilitate the growth of the company. But by all like I think the worst example is the one that you mentioned earlier, Freddie, where all of a sudden you have to call the got to call the owner for permission. That's just not going to work. That's just going to drive everybody away.
No,
That's
rules and
Yeah.
guidelines,
that
man.
yeah, that's more like I'm not confident in anything I do. And therefore, can you imagine what perception you're leaving with the company? It's crazy. Hey, listen, guys, we're getting close to our half hour mark before we, because of course the three of us could sit there talking for the next hour, but we should probably start to wrap it up. And so, on that note, Steve, you want to take away with your takeaway from today?
Yeah, being that we really started out with the smaller company, kind of growing into being able to delegate and grow sales, and what comes first. Um, every business is different. Everybody's needs are going to be different. But I think if you have an open mind to, delegating and trusting that they're going to be okay with it, I'll give you one little secret. I used to have Friday meetings. Every Friday, I'd bring bagels in and we'd all meet. And then I had texts because we were a tech company, but we talk about what the clients are doing or whatever. But those were the times for everybody to kind of understand what's going on with everybody else. And even if there was only 8 of us at the time, it was still good to hear from Charlie or from Rocco or whoever what was going on with these clients. But that's the kind of way to kind of bring up and promote up people you can delegate to because they trust you.
Go for it. Take it away, Freddie.
I would say that the biggest takeaway would be, from my perspective, is implementing systems, giving people direction and permission to be able to make decisions without having to call mom and dad for those permissions, and get yourself out of the way and let people make happen. And more importantly, don't forget past clients, because that's your gold.
Yep.
I agree.
Maybe.
I'm going to kind of mix and match a few things from what we talked about today. I'm going to say, let the business breathe, but let it breathe within the guardrails of allowing the owner to let the team move without him or her. You got to let the business breathe. If you keep holding it back and suffocating it, you're not going to go anywhere. So, on that note, I want to thank everybody for joining us this week on Business Lunatics. Hit follow, hit subscribe, and join the Loonies next week for more no fluff, no BS, and just pure business madness. Thank you very much.